Imagine taking enough cash to buy the entire Nintendo company outright. And instead of doing that, you spend it building a video game where nobody has legs. In October 2021, Mark Zuckerberg stood in front of a virtual camera and announced that Facebook was dead. Well, the name anyway. The company was now Meta. He promised to build the Metaverse, a virtual reality utopia that would host 1 billion people. What followed was one of the most catastrophic financial flexes in modern corporate history. Meta's Reality Labs division incinerated over $80 billion, trying to build a future that absolutely nobody asked for. By early 2026, the flagship platform, Horizon Worlds, had reached just 0.03% of that billion-user promise. This is the story of how the biggest tech giant on Earth panicked, built an $80 billion ghost town, and learned the hard way that you can't force people to live in a headset. To understand this colossal failure, you have to understand why Zuckerberg pulled the trigger in the first place. He didn't just wake up one day and decide he wanted to be the mayor of a virtual city. He was terrified. See, Facebook had a fatal flaw. Every time you opened their apps, you were doing it on an Apple or Google device. Apple and Google owned the playground, which meant they made the rules. And in 2021, Apple proved exactly why that was a nightmare for Meta. They released a single iOS update called App Tracking Transparency that let users block apps from tracking their data. In a single stroke, Apple wiped out an estimated $10 billion of Meta's revenue for 2022. That is more money vanished by one software update than the entire GDP of Iceland. Add to that the massive PR nightmares of the Cambridge Analytica scandal and whistleblowers exposing Facebook's toxic algorithms. Zuckerberg needed an escape pod. He needed to own the hardware, the software, and the platform. He needed the Metaverse. The launch disaster. So in December 2021, Meta launched Horizon Worlds. The pitch? Put on a $300 headset, hang out with your friends, and build virtual spaces. The reality? It looked like a bootleg PlayStation 2 game. Users floated around as disembodied torsos because Meta couldn't figure out how to program virtual legs. When Zuckerberg posted a selfie to celebrate launching in France, it went virally, instantly memed. He looked lifeless, standing in front of an Eiffel Tower that looked like it was rendered in Microsoft Paint. Internally, it was a disaster. The Verge leaked memos showing that Meta executives were begging their own employees to use the platform. It was so buggy that developers were ditching it to go back to regular Zoom calls. If you wouldn't spend $80 billion on a virtual Eiffel Tower either, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It tells the YouTube algorithm that you're enjoying the video and it helps me keep making these for you. All right, back to the disaster. By late 2022, the wheels were completely falling off. John Carmack, the legendary programmer behind Doom and a top VR executive at Meta, abruptly resigned. He basically stated that Meta had infinite money and talent, but couldn't stop self-sabotaging. The numbers backed him up. Meta hoped for 500,000 active users by the end of 2022. They peaked at 300,000 and crashed to under 200,000. Meanwhile, a YouTuber named Jarvis Johnson spent a week inside the platform and found only about 900 people online at any given time. Financially, it was a bloodbath. By the end of 2025, Reality Labs had lost $83.6 billion. The mobile app version of Horizon Worlds had 45 million downloads, but users only spent about $1.1 million total. That's 2 cents per user. Meta's stock tanked, and Zuckerberg was forced to lay off 21,000 employees. The AI life raft. Then, in late 2022, OpenAI launched ChatGPT. In 2 months, it hit 100 million users. Suddenly, the metaverse wasn't just empty, it was obsolete. Silicon Valley had a new shiny toy. Zuckerberg is incredibly ruthless when he needs to be. He read the room, pivoted the entire company to generative AI, and Wall Street rewarded him. Meta's stock skyrocketed. Ironically, the only hardware hit Meta actually had was their Ray-Ban smart glasses. They sold over 7 million units by 2025 because they looked like normal sunglasses, not bulky VR prisons. The end of the dream. By January 2026, the writing was on the wall. Meta slashed another 1,500 Reality Labs jobs. In March 2026, they announced they were pulling the plug on Horizon Worlds for VR headsets entirely. After user backlash, they reversed the decision a day later, putting it on life support. No new content, just a graveyard for the few people still logging in. The platform Zuckerberg renamed his company for was now basically a mobile app, trying to compete with Roblox. Conclusion: Zuckerberg was actually right about the problem. Relying on Apple and Google was a massive threat to his empire. But his solution was fundamentally flawed. He asked humanity to put on a blindfold, leave the real world, and hang out in a glitchy cartoon where nobody had legs. In 1992, author Neil Stephenson coined the term Metaverse in his sci-fi novel Snow Crash. He wrote it as a dystopian warning about a failing society. Mark Zuckerberg read it as a business plan. 30 years and $83 billion later, it turns out the sci-fi author was the one who got it right.